doing various things. You would see on TikTok, actually, still, depending on how those timeframes work. And then we're also joined by the fabulous Heidi Jokos, who you would recognize from television screens, all of you, I hope. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now.
Thank you.
You can take it away.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you to Media Monitoring Africa for this important discussion around mental health and journalism, because we cannot be discussing media freedom in any way, I think, Heidi, without a conversation around mental health.
Yeah.
So we just joked about it now that your battery is about to die, and I've been spending my days at beaches and paragliding and riding donkeys for the last 3 months, and I'll tell you why. So last year, I just launched a very successful book, and it was at the height of my career, managing a massive team, managing News 24, was killing it, and I was diagnosed with burnout. And the funny thing is that when burnout comes, it doesn't come at the time you're going through stuff. It comes afterwards, right? So I've been through a period of, COVID, killing it, managing the transition in a team, going through incredibly big, life-changing family issues, but powering it through it until my brain just couldn't anymore. And at the time when it was suggested to me, and this was in possibly about September last year, that the only solution is you need to switch off. And I could not imagine a world, because for 13 years, we glamorized overworking. We glamorized sleeping on pavements and, a 20-hour shift at an ANC conference. You know the life, Heidi. It's my 18th day back to back without taking a break, and that's the life we lived, right? Or we live, and my body just couldn't anymore. And the manifestation of my burnout was in extreme suicidal thoughts, and I started fetishizing suicide to the point that I had to get psychiatric help. And I realized that there was nothing wrong. Nothing. Everything. I'd been through a divorce. I'd lost my parents. I'd been through extreme trauma with work. I've been doxxed by the Guptas. There was some, things that happened in my life. But at this time in my life, nothing was wrong. I was fine. I had a good job. I had a good home. Life was fine. It wasn't even the busiest political year last year. Last year was an easy year, 2023, comparatively. And I realized that if I don't step back, I will die, literally. And I then started a journey of trying to figure out, could I step back? And the instinct as journalists, because so much of what we do is tied to purpose and tied to who we are as people. You can't imagine a world without this purpose.
Yeah.
Journalism is the oxygen you breathe, but it's the same thing that suffocates you. So how do you distinguish between the two? And so what happened then was I was then forced to make a decision to just leave. And what that looked like was not taking another job immediately, not leaving for greener pastures, because when you're at that level of burnout, you realize that, another job, another journalism gig, I was the best job I could have ever wanted in my life, And you realize that fundamentally you've just been putting plasters on this massive, massive cancerous wound for 13 years. And the irony of it is that I've been a person that has been hugely loud about mental health. And I've been talking about it from 2018, where it was not sexy to talk about mental health in journalism, where colleagues from your ex-colleagues said to me in an interview with Gary Clifton, it's millennial tears, that we must tough it up. because in the 80s they covered the state of emergency and they just carried on. And I said, that's why half of you are alcoholics, right? Let's be honest about it. Because you topped it up in the 80s and now look at your life. And you're imposing that trauma on us now as your subordinates in the newsroom. And so it was a really hard thing for me to swallow that, like, I tried everything, Heidi. Like last year, I was like, I didn't want to accept that I was at burnout. So I'll run through a list of everything I went for. I went for counseling, well, for a therapist. I went to a life coach. I went for something called trauma release exercise. I even went for a class that literally average age is 75. It's called Nia. It's smiling while doing aerobics. I'm not kidding. I went for touch therapy because I could my body, my mind was dying, and I could not accept it until I had to be like, right, lights out. And now, even in the lights out, I cannot tell you how addictive the work that we do is. It's a drug. It's wunda. Right? And so what it does is when the high is high, when you get the scoop, when you're running, when things are good, you're good. But when you crash, you are alone in that crash. And because we are not talking about the crash, I don't know when you go through your crash. So even though we're together in the high, we're not together in the low, and we just think that it's us, it's me, not realizing that surely if you had a career that started when you were 17 years old, did not take a break till now. We went through all of the things we went through, and we've just glamorized. Okay, right, next thing, masters. Okay, next book. Okay, next this. Okay, next that. Because that's what we're addicted to.
Yeah.
And then when the crash happens and you wake up the next day and you have no identity, and you realize, damn, maybe the price of this job is high and we don't talk about it.
Oh, how do I speak after that? I'm very sorry you had to go through that, Qaanitah. It's not easy being alone. And as much as this industry is very out there and you speak to millions of people every day, it's very lonely. And I know how you feel. And I'm glad that you reached a point in your life where you accepted your reality, because that's not easy, especially when it is a drug. It really is. You get the exclusives, you get the scoops, and you run with it. And when you crash and you're all by yourself. My experience has also been quite similar. I think I'm nearing a burnout, to be really honest, because I work every day of my life. Monday to Friday, I report, and then Saturday and Sunday, I anchor.
And the fact that nobody around you says that's not okay.
Yeah, no. And the thing is, everyone's like, you need to just think about it. Don't anchor on weekends. I'm like, okay, so I'll starve to death then. But when I realized that my work is becoming problematic in the sense of it's taking a big toll on me, is when I started getting really badly abused on social media, and people would say all sorts of things. The one day I tweeted about Mama Winnie Mandela, and they said I should be necklaced like Stompy was. I had a terrible ordeal. I've pinned it on my ex account if anyone wants to go see it. So I was almost raped and murdered in 2022. They broke into our house and I was tied up. And till this day, I believe that was an actual attack on me as a journalist. I don't think it was just a random house break-in. Someone tweeted me and said, you should eat a bag of cement and toughen the fuck up. And I was like, okay, am I going crazy, or is this like something really serious that's happened to me? But the point I'm trying to make is that it's really not easy, and it's not glamorous. Like I was like, wow, you're on ENCA, it's so amazing. Like you're on TV, you get to interview all these people. And I'm like, you have no idea how I sometimes have a panic attack literally 5 minutes to air, and I have to force myself to calm down because the whole world's watching, and how dare Heidi be human and have feelings and take a break from the world out there. And I normally take 1 month off a year, which is in August, and I go see my family in Greece. I've just come back from my trip and I feel like I haven't been in 50 years because I'm so exhausted and I can't deal with how insensitive humans have become. And it's like, no, but you must do it. It's like what they said to you about millennial tears. And it's like, no, but we're human and we experience and we feel things. And I can't go and report on a story where 70 people have been burned to death. And I'm the first journalist on the scene. I can smell people burning. I could smell it. And then after that, I must just be normal and accept it. And then people tweeting me and saying, so you're okay with the fact that all those people in the building were foreign nationals? I'm like, but guys, they're humans, you know, and we have to show that sensitivity towards the story we're covering. I've also done trauma release. It's really saved me. I still do trauma release. I do different kinds of therapy. Like I can't speak to a therapist. I'm like, just like, this is not working. You don't understand me. So let's not do this.
We have a solution for that, but we'll come to that.
Yeah. So I do something called body talk, which is, I'm a very spiritual person. So I do something called body talk, which really helps me. But I've found ways to just like function, which is very toxic because I'm going to end up in an environment or a situation where, and I think I'm already there, where I'm just so despondent. Like when someone talks to me, I'm like, just what is the point of this conversation? I can't deal. Can we move on? Because I'm trying to save the little bit of energy that I have left to be on air and to break the news and to get.
So anyways, at the end of the day, you end up being a really shitty person, especially to the people that you love.
Yeah, okay, now my people still love me.
No, I'm not saying they don't love you.
I don't think I'm that like sometimes I've become very irritable because I don't sleep enough, which best way to torture someone is to take their sleep away from them. And that's literally what's happening to me, is that I don't have enough sleep. And when that is tampered with, then I get even more irritable. So I'm just trying to say that it's okay not to be okay. And I am not okay. I'm definitely not okay. And I have to face the reality that I think you faced, where you have to look at yourself in the mirror and go like, how much longer? This can't go on for much longer. And it doesn't help because my parents, I'm alone in Joburg now. My parents have moved to Greece permanently after my ordeal because they were in the house when all of that happened to me. And my sister's in Dubai, my other sister's in the Netherlands, my one sister's here in Pretoria, but she's moving to PE soon. And it's just like, it's a very lonely space to be in. So I have to protect my space and I have to protect my energy. And I really try to do that. That's also why I've detached from social media. Like I don't tweet that much anymore. And when I do tweet, like I mute the tweet because I just can't deal with how mean people are.
So what I've done in the last 6 months, maybe even a year, right? Is I do what I do for everything in my life, was if I don't understand something, just like throw myself into it. And I started doing that around mental health, right? So I see it from 3 perspectives. So perspective A is the internal challenges of being a journalist. And that's all textbook stuff, right? So you're going to work long hours, you're going to be underpaid, you're going to be not have support. So those are all systemic journalism issues, right? Then you have the external stuff, the external trauma, which is what when we talk of mental health, you most of the time you're only talking of this middle stream, which is you are intimidated or you are threatened or you go and you see dead bodies lying around. So it's that overt trauma, which I somehow think is an easier trauma to deal with because it's overt. You know what it is, right? Then you have what is now a third layer, which is what journalists before us didn't have to deal with, which is the instantaneous abuse that follows you wherever you go. If you're in your kitchen, that abuse comes to you. If you're in your lounge, that abuse comes to you. In real time, people can harass you in whichever safe space you are, as long as you have your phone. And you need your phone because you need to work, right? So you're having this triple trauma constantly every day for periods of time, right? So we are not, as journalists, we're not the only people in the world that have to deal with this, right? We are no different to frontline workers, police officers, paramedics. You deal with that overt trauma. But the difference that we face as journalists is again threefold. One, there's an element of bravado that comes where acknowledging pain is weakness. So if I am tired and I verbalize that I'm exhausted, a human instinct, I'm penalized. Or I am in myself, judging myself because I need to have this bravado to be good at my job, right? Secondly, you are facing trauma from the environment that you have to perform in traumatizes you, because you have middle managers that are unable to deal with the challenges we face. Or the flip side, where you have the imposition of trauma because they are traumatized. So when you speak to colleagues, it's not the smelling of burnt people that's really traumatizing you. Yes, it is traumatic and you can identify that. But what kills you is the lack of humanity you face when you come back to the office and everyone says, toughen the fuck up and go and file your story. That's the re-traumatization that's killing our colleagues. That's leading people to suicide, right? The third element is the normalization of harassment. Normalized. It's the name of the game. You must be traumatized. People must put pictures of put your face on pornography and put it out because you signed up to be a journalist. No, I didn't sign up for that. I did not. This is not the price I'm prepared to pay. And if it is, then let's change the game.
Yeah.
So the cyber misogyny, that if you look, empirical research done by the Media Monitoring Africa, of the 10 most abused journalists in an election period, most of them are women. And then on top of it, you are fighting for your life to get ahead in your career because it must be worth it. So surely something's got to give. So if you're not an alcoholic, you're abusing drugs. If you're not abusing drugs, you must abusing sleeping tablets, or you must have an autoimmune disease, or you must be like me and have morbid obesity at 25 years old, because it's the name of the game. Choose your poison and keep it moving. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't.
Yeah. It's a harsh reality. And the part about being a woman, it's like my mother always says, it's a blessing and a curse, because you are even more attacked for being a woman and being good at what you do. It's like, how is that possible? How are you a woman and you look good, but you also know what you're talking about and you're smart? So you get even more attacked for that. And the issue on social media, it's like it used to get to me so badly, where I used to, obviously I was a lot younger, but now I'm like, I don't actually fucking care what you have to say. Like, I don't care. I've reached that point where I'm like, I don't care what you have to say, because come to my face and say it, you won't. You won't say it to my face because you're not a real human being and you got no balls. So I just block. I literally just block. And I know other people can't do that. And a lot of people get really invested in it. But I used to be at a point where I used to sit there and respond to every message and say no and this and like try and defend myself. And I was like, but why am I defending myself? Because I know who I am. And that also comes with a lot of maturity and a lot of maybe experience and time in the industry. But it's like, it's just not worth it. Like, your mental health and your stability and just your health overall is way more important than responding to somebody who has 5 followers on social media. I mean, you spoke about putting your face on whatever. Like, I had, when Karima Brown was still alive, I had a situation where I was covering the PIC inquiry and they left the feed on, and I was discussing with an anchor, which is common practice, about the questions. The anchor is on air. She's not following the PIC inquiry, which is like 6 hours in a day. She doesn't know what the big talking points were. So she was asking me the talking points anyway. And then whoever was behind defaming me and trying to deface me and all of that, picked up on it, and then they started posting pictures of my face, like they just took my face and they put me in like a baby cot, and then they had Karima's face, and then Karima was like spoon feeding me. And that, I can't even tell you, that absolutely devastated me. I was a complete wreck. But to your point, I went back to the office, and I was very fortunate. I had the likes of Jeremy Maggs, that was editor at the time at ENCA, and they put out a post immediately, and they said, you know, we support Heidi, we support her journalism. There's nothing untoward as to what happened. And it was almost like, okay, get over it, like toughen up, like this is what you signed up for. And it's like, no, that's why when I block people on social media and they're like, but Heidi, you can't block people because you're journalist. I'm like, no, I can. I actually can block you because when I job fucked up, that's why, and I will block you.
There's been times years ago where I would see your reaction and see that you're not okay, and the need to assert yourself and respond. And you know, there were days where I just probably said this strong. I was like, I just feel like I need to hide Heidi and tell her, like, none of that matters.
Yeah.
But the toxicity about the space that we're in is that to reach people, you have to engage with people. And then it's like telling a soccer player, you must go into the field, but you must be okay with the fact that that field is filled with thorns and you're playing barefoot. Right, to play the game. Why are you not scoring 5 goals? Do you understand that element? And so the temptation of like, oh, just log off. You have a targeted campaign paid for against our colleague Karen Moore. And the response is, don't be on social media. Right? And I'm like, no, we need to change the game. And I'll tell you this much. My experience, because I myself, Ranjani, and others got the brunt of the Bao Pottinger, the early days, when it was creme de la creme cyber misogyny, right? And the moment where you're like, I'm not here for this, you can't. And then you insulate yourself, because that's what you need to do. And that's why we need to have many more of these discussions around sanitary social media use. And what do you need to do to protect yourself from that injury that comes from the constant, it's like constant banging, but you must not be hurt at the end of it, you know?
And what challenges me the most, and I will be very open about this, is that you have to be switched on all the time. You can never switch off. Like, you didn't see that tweet, you didn't see that notice that came out, why aren't you on your phone? What's going on? Like, and now I put my phone on do not disturb when I'm sleeping. I'm like, I can't do this because I am going to collapse. I'm not going to cope. And that's been always difficult for me. And especially like when you're in the gym and then I'm like, I'm trying to gym, you know, and then you come off as being rude, but it's like, this is my time and my space, and it's okay to switch off. And I always had a problem with that. I could never switch off. It was like, if I switched off, I was failing South Africans, or I was failing myself or my job or journalism, because how dare you switch off? You need to be switched on 24/7. And I think that's what has been saving me so far, is the fact that I've learned to switch off. I've learned I'm working now. I've got this story. I've got this exclusive, or I'm on air right now. When I'm off air, I'm off air. And it's not to say that I don't care about my stories, or I don't care about the people out there that are waiting to be informed by me. But there's a time to tell the news, and there's also a time to look after myself. And I like the point, Qaanitah, where you speak about the fact that till this day, I don't think it's sexy to talk about mental health. You talk about mental health, people are like, what are you talking about? Like, can you just learn to be okay? And I had a talk on Women's Day. It was a government talk. And I said, it's okay not to be okay. And all the women came to me afterwards and said, Heidi, I can't believe what you just said. I'm like, no, but it is okay not to be okay. If I'm not okay, I'm not okay. I'm not going to force myself to be okay. And last year, I literally went through the worst year of my life. My parents moved to Greece. I was in a very long relationship. It ended. I was still dealing with the trauma of my ordeal with someone trying to literally rape me, and I escaped it by 1 second. And I was a mess on air, and people were picking it up. People were like, you don't look okay. You've lost a lot of weight. Looks like you've been crying. I was an absolute mess. And I was like, yes, I am a mess. And what I'm doing is I'm going on air, I'm telling the story, and I'm moving on with my life. And I'm dealing with what I'm going through. I'm going to go through what I'm going through. And I'm so sorry I don't look cute and pretty all the time, but this is my reality right now, and I'm not going to hide away from that. And what I struggle with the most, and I wish us as humans could just change that, and the industry could also just change that, is that people are not going to be okay, and people are going to suffer and struggle mentally, because like you said, it's not just the trauma you face head on about dead bodies, or a story where children are dying, or whatever the case might be, or the fact that you go to political stories and the men, they treat you like you're just a piece of meat, and you must be nice to them, because if you're not nice to them, they won't give you an interview. That's also another element of huge trauma and mental issues that I think we don't touch on. But it's also the fact that there are other issues, like you're overworked, you're underpaid, you have to force yourself to be given big stories. You have to force people to believe in you, which is like the wildest thing for me, that, you work somewhere and people are like, do that story. Do you think you're capable? And it's like dealing with all the other mental issues as well.
Yeah. So how I see it is that people go through shit in life, right? So your parent, I'm not saying you should dial it down, because I'll use this analogy on myself, and this is how I thought for a very long time, right? My mother died. I texted the editor and duty to said I was supposed to work late. I texted that my mom had an accident, she may not be able. 5 minutes later, so the newsroom was aware that there's a crisis. 5 minutes after the news that my mother died, a colleague calls me to ask me where's the copy, because he hadn't opened the email. Right? I had a miscarriage, went to on a story, went to the hospital, and then went back to the story.
Oh yeah, that happened to me during the PIC inquiry as well. I was miscarrying, and I just had to carry on air. So it's life. People are human, and they go through a lot. And I think it's we just don't talk about it enough, and it's tragic.
But if we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't think it could be changed.
Yeah.
If I don't think, because this is not a pity party, because at the end of this conversation, we need to have real constructive, because that's where I am. All the anger that I felt, because you can't blame a person, you can't blame Twitter, you can't blame your editors, because you do that, right? You go through phases where you're like, this is the enemy, or this is the person that's imposing this trauma, or if I could just be paid better, or if it's a cumulative systemic problem that needs to be resolved, which number one starts with talking about it. But secondly, similarly, like how when I started as a political journalist, they told me women political journalists don't survive. There's only a few, and they're there. Those handful of them. And I was like, well, we can change it. Let's try to change it. If I don't make it cool, but let's try. And then it worked, right? So I'm here today saying there's a huge epidemic of mental health crisis in journalism, which starts at the bud of it, which is the denial that the problem exists, and the enormity of the problem, that we know. Politicians don't have to send someone with a gun to your house to intimidate you. They don't have to do that anymore. They literally can just threaten you, and you're good, and they're fine. Right? And so, I mean, you see it in war zones. The easiest way, what do you need to do when you want to shut down a message? You see it in Palestine. Let's attack the journalist. Let's go after the journalist, right? Here, in today's world, they don't have to do that. They don't have to kill us. They don't have to jail us.
But they'll kill you.
They can just make you crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why the effort to deal with my mental health, I had to see it as an act of radical fight back. Me being okay, me sitting on a dhow in the middle of the ocean off the coast of Orlando was what I needed to do. And like I said, in my, I'm being completely honest here when I say, it's not cute that in my 6 months of time, I wrote a book, I launched a foundation called Debrief Media. I am getting ready to apply for my PhD. I like, you know what I mean? I work full time for Al Jazeera. I learned how to do social videos because why? Because I can't just sit it out. I'm sick. If I had cancer, if I was a doctor, if I was a teacher and I had cancer, what would they have done? They would have said, go home, recover from your cancer, and come back 6 months later. Right? Now, I kill my 13 years of hard work if I don't still do the things. When I'm like, so it's essentially what happens is you sprained your ankle, then you keep running. So then you break the bone. Then you keep walking, then it becomes infected. Then you keep limping because you still want to move, and then you have to amputate the foot. And then you're like, this was an easy thing to solve. It was a sprained ankle. Do you get me? And so that's why when we start differentiating between levels, we start naming things. That's why for me, the act of radical fight back is to say, this is cyber misogyny. We're going to talk about it. We're going to put it in the lexicon. SANEF can't meet until there's a conversation about it. And I don't want the conversation to be around women. We are not going to be carrying the fight against mental health because we are the victims. You can't tell the victims to find the solutions too. Help us. There's a group thing because like you when you see the disproportionate attacks on female journalists to male journalists, but you don't see male journalists and that's why there's a complete disregard to it. Toughen up because you're not facing, you're living it, right? And then you have to then you still have to deal with the trauma of the real world that we are literally living with climate crisis and Palestine and a genocide happening and a world that's not ending. But again, hope, because why? You chose this job. Right? So I'm just going to say my last point is because it's on my mind now, Heidi, but where my mind is at the moment is we can share war stories from now till tonight. We have enough stories. I can one up you on every trauma story you have. Right? Because exactly what happened to you happened to me in 2014, where they came into my house and I woke up and a man was on top of me, strangling me. Like, you understand? Like, we live these things every day, right? You go through a divorce, tomorrow you have to be at work. Nobody cares. But I'm saying there's a differentiated response to be like, how much of this is normal human tragedy of life? How much of this is systemic journalism problems that can change? And then how much of it is the actual job, which we can then get support for? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, surely sending a woman alone to a political rally that ends late at night and then she gets the normalization of catcalling is something we can easily solve. You know what I mean? That's the easiest thing. Now there's so much of research into things like moral injury, things like secondary trauma. There's so much of research about it. So we can use that to implement, to say, right, this is what debrief sessions are going to look like. So first, let's start on an awareness campaign. Secondly, these are mental health protocols for newsrooms. This is what happens. This is leave policies, enforced leave policies. Heidi cannot work 7 days a week. So cute. I wish it was demure. It's not. Yeah. Oh, my. But I'm saying, I know where you were. I know that life of like, and somewhat our egos are even boosted by it.
Yeah.
We're almost fueled by it, and it's a sick, it's a sick reality of what we've normalized in journalism, that the price of success is your life must go to shit. You want to be a successful journalist, your life must go to shit. You must either have a drink, like I said, drinking problem. You must go through a hectic divorce that no one like, and just keep it moving. You must, some of our colleagues are homeless. Some of our colleagues I know have been left homeless at the price of the job. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And the problem we have with stupid interventions, right? Which is take leave. Last year I took leave. I went off for a month. First time I took a month off. And I came back to the newsroom and I said, I am healed. What did I do? I worked 10 times harder because of that feeling of insecurity that shit, I was away for a month. And so that that 1 month did nothing for you. Nothing. You know what I mean? And we're talking to you as people almost on the other side of it, where we actually sought help, like whatever help that you. There are people that we work with who are raped on stories and don't know what to do about it.
Who are what? Raped.
Yes. Because there's no safe environment to go to your editor to say, because the editor is going to blame you for being out late. That's who we live again. If we have to start unpacking war stories, I'm saying war stories, I'm talking about journalism stories, you understand that we've normalized a toxic thing in the name of it is what it is. And what I love about the fact that journalism and media, I'm going to stop talking now, is going through the moment of reckoning that it is our media bosses and editors have realized that it's not business as usual. Female journalists can't be harassed and you think it's cool. When 60% of journalists are women, when 60% of your audience is woman, it's not something, we can't accept it. It's not okay. And there are interventions, there are tools. But if we don't start talking about it, 2 weeks ago, I met a very well-known colleague of ours. And he says to me, he hates when it's August because he just doesn't want to be the person that talks about Marikana, because for the lack of a better word, Marikana fucked him up. But you're supposed to be the hero now. You must write the books and you must be the documentaries and you must take the photos and you must. But personally, Marikana messed him up. Right? There was a time where I was killing it, scoop after scoop after scoop. At every single ANC press conference, I was completely torn to shit. Right? And again, it fueled my ego because it made me, right, next scoop, next scoop. But I didn't realize, like, death by 1,000, what is it? Cuts. So it's not, one blow is easy to understand. One single thing is easy to understand. Somebody took a gun to your head, right? Understand it. But somebody knocks you every day, every day, every day, every day for 5 years. Surely somebody needs to just be like, right, enough. I'm done.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't think people realize what we go through every day. Like every day is different, you know? Like some days aren't as bad, or maybe they are bad, but we've just normalized it in our heads to say it is what it is. And it isn't what it is. Like we have to find a way to love each other in the space, because I think there's just no understanding of how traumatic it really is. But if you ask me the question of, and I had this conversation with Karen Morn last week, and she said to me, you know, if you had a choice, and you could go back, would you let what happened to you happen to you? So like I had 2 traumatic events in like a year. And I was like, yeah. No, I was like, no, there's no way. She's like, no, you would, because it changes something in you, and it's part of your journey. It makes you who you are. So if you had to ask me in another life, or before I became a journalist and I had a choice, like, how did you really want to do that? The answer would still be yes, I do. And I will always want to be a journalist because I think it's a calling. I really do. I don't think that you just walk into journalism and and that's probably why we tolerate so much.
And that's why, Heidi, sorry to interrupt. And that's exactly my point, is that the solution is not walking away.
Yeah.
That's not the solution. The solution is not, let's get a whole bunch of us burnt out, and then Heidi gets a corporate job. I get I don't know what I'm capable of doing outside. I don't know. I don't have much skills. but do you know what I mean? Like that has been the cycle. You do it until you just can't anymore, and then you tap out to whatever job you can find.
And the industry has lost such good journalists because of this.
Yeah.
So that's why this is a crisis, and it needs to urgently be addressed. And the point I'm trying to make is that despite all the bullshit, and you know, I say this with like literally tears in my eyes, like it's so fucking hard. It's so hard. But I do it for the people that need us, you know, like the gobos in the townships and the kids. And like, I must fight for them because nobody else is doing it. The people that are paid to do it in government are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's like, I know I'm sacrificing my well-being, my mental state. Like you're saying, working 7 days a week is not cute. Like, I'm aging for my time. And like, that's a problem for me. It's like a really big problem for me. Like, I'm so scared to age. But the point I'm trying to make is that I know I'm sacrificing a lot of myself and a lot of my happiness to get the story out there, but there needs to be a broader conversation. And, you know,
a healthy way to do it.
But I don't even think it's about a conversation anymore, because we know what the problem is. Like, it's in our face, you know, we see it every single day. We need to find ways to better the space that we're in. And it's not just starting with Heidi or Qaanitah, it's starting also with everyone else in the industry, like who we work for, just the whole space. There needs to be proper mechanisms in place. And when there is bullshit and journalists are harassed and treated like absolute rubbish, we need to address that. And I think we become so silent on it. And I know that there's a broader issue with certain political parties and certain media houses, but it's like, that behavior is just not allowed. Like, I don't care what happened. You can't treat journalists like that. You can't speak to journalists like that. It's just not acceptable. And like, everyone knows when we're out on a story, like, is Heidi here? Because we know Heidi's going to fight for us. Like, I'm always the fighter. And by the end of the day, I go into my little corner and I'm by myself and I cry by myself because it's taken all my energy to remind people that there's media freedom in this country. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. Like, excuse me, this is not how it works. So I'm just trying to say that I would do it a million times over, but I would do it differently in terms of acknowledging that I'm not okay, acknowledging that I'm tired and I can't do this anymore. And whatever, if someone else wants to get the scoop, like, I'm okay with that. But it's that thing of, you work for a month and then you come back and it's like, oh my God, I've missed out on so much. And now I work myself to death because I was missing for a month and people are going to forget. And it's also an ego thing. Like, don't think journalists don't have an ego and don't want to be known. And, oh my God, Heidi, you did that story. Qaanitah, you broke that story. You got that exclusive with this person. And it's like, it is an ego thing. And it's a drug. You're constantly feeding into it. You're constantly feeding into, but then it becomes a very dark and lonely place. And we need to find a way to address that and accept that reality. And I just want to say this, that I know digital is the way and the future, and social media is the way and the future, but seriously, you don't always have to post and you don't always have to respond to those messages. Like, my life has completely changed after I had a support structure when these things were amplified, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to get off social media. And I was like, no, I'm not going to give into what they want. They want me to get off social media because they don't want my loud voice about what's right and what's wrong. So I just mute the stuff now, and I block people. I'm so good at blocking. Blocking is very cute and demure. Blocking.
Let me tell you something, right? So, like years ago, Zilikazi wa Africa wrote a story about, in the Sunday Times, about Zuma's mansion in Dubai. I had nothing to do with the story. My byline is not on the story. The screen grab of the story shows that had nothing to do with the story. Yet for 6 years, every single thing I tweeted was like that. I did a thorough investigation about Gaddafi millions at Zuma with a colleague called Kaifis, right? Kaifis gets 0 attacks a lot. Till today, that is repurposed by bots. And like I said, I went through an extreme phase where I tried to understand social media. I did a whole dissertation. I wrote in an academic book published by Palgrave London, because that's what I do. I've become obsessed with it because I'm like, if I'm a victim of it, let it make sense. If it makes sense, I can get it. And that's why for me, with the mental health and the burnout, I'm like, okay, how much of it is weakness? How much of it is, okay, you lost both your parents, you lost your child, you went through a divorce, that's normal, human. But how much of it is systemic? How much of
It's
it
not normal. Don't call it normal.
No, I mean, it's life.
Yeah,
it's life,
yeah.
right? And again, there's ways to deal with that. There's
Yeah.
therapy and do that. But then how much of it is, it's the name of the game. And that's what I'm on a mission. Like, William doesn't know, but he's going to help me find money for this. No, but surely after a traumatic, I'm not talking big trauma. Surely after a fire, there must be something where you can be debriefed. And if I can help you, I'm unemployed. I can do it now. Right? But I am so determined, absolutely determined to change the narrative that you chose this and this is the way it is, because it doesn't have to be. Because we are all staring at the extinction of journalism and the good work that we do because they found the trick. And I refuse to let this be the way we are silenced. We must all drop down like flies, not of physical damage, but because of mental damage. Right? How long can you pull for? Maybe a year? Like logically, if you look at your life right now, like physically, and the scary part is people around you, people who love you, look at you and say, why are you doing this to yourself? And then you wonder, like, what am I doing to myself? I'm just working. Like, I have to do it. No, you don't have to pull an 18-hour shift. You don't.
Yeah, it's not normal.
And when I talk about like my obesity journey, there's not a person that thought to say, hey, can I help you? You are not okay. And so, and why I use obesity, because I'm okay with it as a manifestation of the trauma I was living at the time. For other people, it's alcoholism. For other people, you go in the 3rd floor of the basement and you take a hit because you need it. Otherwise, you're not going to get through the day. These things happen, right? So when I say these fluffy conversations we've had, and we've commemorated Black Wednesday, and we've done all of these fun things as media freedom, and when there's an overt silencing, we out in court and we have placards, that's the fun things. We can do that. What we can't do is help friends who are constantly going into diabetic comas because of the trauma. That's the part the world doesn't see. That's the part when we actually lose colleagues to suicide. We don't really talk about it. And as I constantly say, I'm like, we venerate Nat Nakasa and the bravery, and we give awards every year You were a recipient, I'm a recipient of it, right? What happened to Janakasa? He died by suicide. Why would you want to repeat that? Shouldn't we use his memory and the power that he had to stop the way of history repeating itself? So, William, will you help me get money? I'm kidding, but not really.
No, I was going to say.
But honestly, there are some systemic things that you can do. If we have a protocol for middle managers, because I love the point you said about why you don't go for therapy. Because newsrooms, if I have to call media owners into this room, I say, what are you doing to support the mental health of journalists? And I've done this. Oh no, I have an ICAS system. You can SMS, do. So I did it. I went to the service provider that the company gives. It's a woman in a basement somewhere in Randburg who has like statues all over. And she's like, let's breathe. And I'm telling her this hectic thing about like what Zuma had like, right? And she's like, let's breathe through it. Also, I have to go back to work because it's Friday.
Like I am breathing. Thank you so much. Thanks.
No, I've come to learn that breath work is helpful, but come on, not in that moment.
No.
But I'm saying you get my point is that they're ill-suited. We're putting bandages on wounds, or we're putting plasters on tumors, and like what the injury versus the solutions is not matching up to each other. And that's what makes me angry, is because there are initiatives, there are things that are in place to help the mental health of journalists, yet they're so ill-fitted to what we need them to be. Then once a year, you get a guy, and it's always a man, that's coming there to talk about mental health. You know, I went to a training where they were like, American guy talking about what worked in one newsroom is that yoga with puppies. They brought puppies to the newsroom, and then everybody was hugging the puppies, and it really helped with like the mental. So I said, okay, I'm gonna phone Heidi. She's going to be in deep clothes. Wait, she's gonna be in deep clothes. She's 40 from the day. They're on a search because 2 children are missing. It's Friday afternoon. Come back to the office, because there are puppies and pizza waiting for you. And you must feel better, my lovey. You must feel better. Because we take your mental health very seriously.
You see, this is my point about how we need to find ways to deal, because we know what the problems are, but don't bring me a puppy, because I will be like, what is happening here? This is not acceptable. I saw something about cows as well. Like I was like, no, guys, this is not it. I saw that there was like a post about horses. No, there was one about cows as well. I was like, anyway, I just think we need to. There are ways to deal with it, and I think the first step is acceptance that we are not okay. We really are not okay. And anyone who says they're okay, they're lying. They really, unless they have like some really good. I don't know, what are these people called? Not feng shui masters, what are they? Feng shui is about your space. But you know, like it's tough and it's lonely, and we shouldn't be alone, because look, we're in a room full of people and we're colleagues. We know what it's like. We know.
But yet we don't know that this is the experiences we have of each other. Yeah. And we know each other for 10 years.
Or it's like we know, like I know that you would be like catcalled or harassed at a like a political conference or whatever, and it's like, just deal with it, babes, and keep walking. And it's like that's just not okay. It's like, and also it doesn't help when you're in a space like that. And I'm very vocal. Like people know me. People are like, "How do you so feisty?" And I'm like, no, but I don't tolerate nonsense. Like it's not how I operate in my life. And I think it's because I've been through so much. Like before, I used to be this little timid Heidi that has to prove herself. Now I'm like, what are you doing? What? No. But the problem is that when you do it alone, it looks like you're crazy. But when you have others to support you, like your colleagues, and I know we all deal with things differently and we all have different battles, but when the issue is so problematic and the same with all of us, and the experience is the same with all of us, we should all be calling it out for what it is. Why must we be secretive about the fact that women get harassed at these political rallies, conferences, whatever it might be, at these marches that happen, the protests that happen. But now, not calling. I'm just like,
and then that's fine, right? So let's say that's fine, right? Then you go to your male supervisor to say, this is what happened. And then you are gaslit. You understand the double trauma that happens? It's usually easy to deal with catcalling because it's catcalling. But then when you go to the safe space that you're supposed to seek safety in, and it's normalized or
emotional.
Yeah.
What did you expect? No, but the way you ask the question,
that double trauma is what's killing us.
Yeah.
So it is at 3:10. Shall we open the floor for some chatter? And then we'll wrap up. Because we want to leave on a positive note, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you just introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Edward Sumela. I come from City Life House. I'm a journalist. Yeah, this is heavy stuff, and it's very. We feel traumatized now. As we're here. But okay, that's two things. One, you spoke about the NPO that you are starting. That's one meeting, and it feels like it's an organization that wants to help fellow journalists. That's how it felt like, and I know that what you're saying, what you're talking about, is for everybody in journalism, but particularly women because of the other stuff. If you can clarify that, whether it's just for women, but the other issue perhaps is the issue of, you were on sort of a holiday, and you said that you wrote a book. You were not supposed to work because you were supposed to, but they also say that number one, is that book about this whole thing that you're speaking about, or is it on something else? And also, they also say that there's a feeling that if you write a book, for instance, as you hold this kind of healing in a way. So what is your experience there? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll use her mic and then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Hattie. So, thank you. That's a very good question. So I was agonizing about. Okay, so let me say this. I've done the awareness thing. Every space I go, every SANEF meeting I've been in, I'm lucky. I had a space at real tables. Like I was on a big editorial seat tables at Media 24, the biggest in South Africa. You understand? I had power, right? So I tried to use that power to advocate internally and externally. So it's something I'm sitting comfortably because we're all friends now. We all know each other's traumas. but so I did that, right? And then I realized I went in the US to a fellowship. And it's something I go and I present with academics. We talk about it's my thing. I've decided that the injury that I've felt from being bullied from the Gupta years till now, it's something I need to use it for good, right? But something was like a miss, especially in my last year when I went through the level of burnout, and I didn't know where to reach out to, right? And the traditional. So I had to leave, right? That was not an option, it was not like a thing. But the fear that I had is that this industry works so fast, how are you going to get back in? Now, 6 months later, I'm ready to come back in. Who's going to hire me? Everybody doesn't have budgets, right? But so that's just a separate thought. But what I aim to do with Debrief the Media is to not approach mental health and interventions of mental health in this pompous, kind of condescending way, right? We need real support. So real support is, for example, getting the best trauma counselors and journalists to come up with a program that is catered for journalists, because psychologists know nothing what we go through. You found them, like I've had the best counselor, the psychologist who specializes in hypertrauma. I went to a psychiatrist who is Her speciality is burnout and high-performing women. Imagine how super specialist you must be, right? First of all, I'm privileged to do that, to pay 2,800 Rand every time I need to go, because my medical aid doesn't pay for it. I was super supported that I had a medical aid that covered some bits of my psychology. That I had Media 24 paying for a life coach for me, and Media 24 paying for you know what I mean? Like, I'm coming from the most privileged position anyone can ever be in, and I was in the position that I was. Let's not think about journalists in Gaza and you're like, damn it, how are you going to be able to live with the mental health trauma of this? So that's what's motivating me to say, okay, there's multiple things that we need to do. Today, what we're doing is important, advocacy and awareness, right? It's an easy thing to do. Anybody can do it. We all can do it, right? Fine. Second thing, training and intervention. I believe managers, newsroom managers are not prepared for the consequence of their decisions on the mental health of the people around them. So help them, teach them. It's easy. It's an easy thing to do. Thirdly, we need to create safe spaces for debriefing. And then we need to have, there's initiatives that are already out there. There's a wonderful initiative of SADAG, but it's not sustainable. It's all plasters for when you are already at breaking point, when you are already suicidal, when you are already burnt out. Not so I am really fascinated. I've been having conversations with psychologists who know nothing about journalism, but are really good about in areas around resilience and how do, like, what are things that you can inculcate? And I know it sounds stupid, but like advocacy around days off, advocacy around like physical health, advocacy around there's so many different small tiny interventions that you can do, right? And I always think about the HIV pandemic. I know it's completely unrelated, but I'll tell you what, is that when there was a change in language, there was a change in outcome. When we started thinking about it differently, because the words were okay, the solution was there. Now we can't talk about a solution because there is half of the journalism population that's telling you get over yourself, you're being a drama queen. Where are you going to find a solution? Do you get me? So then, talking about my non-sabbatical, it has not. The book that I'm writing, not near ending, but I have a hard deadline in November, is literally a fun thing that I wanted to do. When I was 19, I used to work for the Guptas, and I used to take a taxi to work every day. And that's how I got the name Zege Zege, because the taxi rank, they used to call me Zege Zege, right? So I used to sit and I used to have, those baby iPads. So I used to sit while we were waiting for the taxi to fill up, and I used to write a fiction story, like a romance story. And that was the first book that was ever published of mine. Do you know that book did better than some of my political books after that? It's called Diary of a Gucci Girl. I'm embarrassed to say. So I always said, I was like, when I write a best-selling political book, then I'm going to go back to fiction. And I wrote a best-selling political book. So now I'm like, okay, well, I have to write my fiction. So I'm writing a completely like unjournalism related love story. Like maybe a bit of my experience will filter through in terms of themes of grief and all of that. But it was just something that I like gave myself the permission to just not care what's happening at the Julie House. And imagine, listen, I'll tell you this. So I left News 24 in April. I worked for 3 months. I was writing for Al Jazeera. I was managing a newsroom in Scene. I was writing columns for News. I still write columns for News 24. I'm still very much productive, right? But I kind of like started tapping out slowly because obviously when it was election day, do you know what the story I wrote on election day? About a mother, those Mandela stories, those international, those ones for international publication. That's definitely not the stories I write. I managed newsrooms during elections, and I was a free bird, chilling, new for me. But I'll tell you what I did. The day the GNU was sealed, got onto a plane, and I went to. Do you know where I went to? Yemen. 50 degrees, no electricity, sleeping on the floor, my girl, right? Just completely like every comfort, no cell phone signal, no like you eating camel belly and rice. That's lunch, right? Pit toilets. I've had my share of pit toilets, right? But I'm telling you why I did it is because I needed to like shock my system. I needed to like go so far away from my life, right? And then I just went through like, okay, well, like what do you want to do? Oh, I love the garden route. The garden route is like my favorite place. I went to the garden route. Okay, I just got lost in Turkey, or like everyone dreams of like going and seeing how the engine room of Al Jazeera works. Go spend time there, But I'm saying I'm privileged to have been able to do that, right? And that privilege came with my life completely falling apart. Like my parents died, I got divorced, a child I bought a house for is no longer there. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, everything bad that could have happened. Now all you can do is just choose joy and choose to restart, right? In retrospect, I probably will be more critical on myself to say you shouldn't have, like, you should have actually not done anything. Like, I should have just chilled for 6 months. I don't think I'm able to do that. I wish I could. But the point is that when I just was like, okay, you're going through burnout. There are days where 2 chapters are done. There are days where you write phenomenal pieces that are like tweeted internationally. And then there are days where, you do a funny video that no one watches. Fine. It's ups and downs. But again, for me, it was like, okay, I will only survive this if I throw myself into new things, new people, new circumstances, learning a new skill. I didn't know how to do video. Let's do video. Let's do social video. Do you get what I'm saying? And it's scary as I say this out loud because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Probably my book is not like can be shit. Probably I don't get a job when I'm ready to get a job. You know what I mean? The variables are like it's a gamble. It's a huge gamble. But I think about the person that I am now versus the person that I was last year this time. And I think the enormous value that I can bring in as an editor to any media organization now, given the fact that I've seen how it happens in the rest of the world, that I've taken time, that I've had conversations, that I've listened, that I've, spent time with fishermen in Kenya and sat with rich people in Doha. You know what I mean? The value that it takes from a person who's not feeling like, okay, deadline. That person couldn't think. And I see it in the quality of the columns that I used to write and the columns I write now. The columns I write now are joyful for me to write because I've had perspective. I'm not on the phone constantly. What happened at the NEC? Okay, NWC. Okay, double check. Taibo. So when? And it was good for the time. You needed to do it. There was a time for it. But the value that I now bring to the space is a better value. I'm a better writer. I can tell you for a fact I'm a better writer than I was a year ago. I have more skills. I am more personable. Also, like I'm not like constantly like one thing away from a rage because I'm so tired. Sorry.
That's such an interesting topic, yet very heavy. It's also traumatizing. I completely agree. But I think thank you so much for really opening up. I think that's really what we needed, as an audience to really understand what you guys really, actually go through, because I think from a distance and we really don't understand it. But I think also just able to speak openly about mental health, it's something that a lot of people shy away from. And this is something that a lot of people go through, not just journalists, people in general. And it's very difficult for normal people. It's much worse when you have to go through it, and you're watched by the whole world and people pick it up, during a show. But I think one thing that I really want to ask, I've got a lot of questions. The one thing I want to ask, because you spoke about having spoken, to Sanef, having spoken to other people about mental health and like really, massive spaces. But we're seeing Media 24, we were able to speak to junior journalists about it, give them a space to open up and speak about it. Because I think what really got to me was when you said this is one way in which journalism will die, because people are going to move away from the space because it's toxic. So we want to kind of try and preserve journalism and make sure that the young journalists that are upcoming are really operating within an environment that allows them to be able to speak about these issues. And also, the other thing I want to ask is within Media 24, are there programs where people can actually be linked to psychologists that are paid by Media 24, just so that they're able to speak out? Because I know we had that privilege, but I'm just not sure if it trickles down to, junior employees. What was the other thing I wanted?
Let me answer that before I forget. So Media 24 is exceptionally great in that element. And I take my hat off to them. Even when I went to the GM of news and I said, listen, I'm in a burnout. They're like, what do you need? And I was the one that said, no, I'll come back after a month, because I just, it was mine. And the support, so they're doing the best they can. The programs in place, but so on the outside, I can say the best, they don't know that it's not the solution is exceptionally great. It's just not matching the problem. And I think that's why we're having these conversations. That's why I want to do the work that I'm doing, is to tailor solutions. Because it's not it's a journalist who is going through a marital problem is not the same as a journalist who's been taken to court by a former head of state. Do you understand? So there's that. So when so I had to battle for a very long time in terms of the power that I had and how much of it. So I preach about mental health, but how much of it am I part of the problem, being in a position of power? And I think that I tried really, really hard, to keep the conversation alive, but also and you can speak to people who were in my teams, and they probably have a completely different environment, because, different response to say Q was terrible for my mental health because she was like screaming for stories all the time, right? But so the some of it is like just the nature of journalism in terms of like the deadlines and the stress and making people work when they're not supposed to work. But also just being super mindful about it has helped me, just being kind to people. Being completely rigid about people taking time off and being like, you are not my star reporter because you work 7 days a week, verbalizing and trying really hard to be support. I think support of like, hey, like, Nchana, you look, what's going on, because we're not machines. And I think what media houses don't realize is that the only thing they're selling, the only thing they're making money is the brains of humans. Now, if these brains are broken, there's going to be a problem.
I know I'm part of the problem, because I always ask people, like, are you okay? No, you must look after yourself. I'm like The Walking Dead. I sleep very little. I'm very cranky. I'm very irritable because I don't sleep enough. And something my sister said, because my sister's also a journalist, she said something to me, and she said, it's not about the quantity of work. So, okay, you're working 16 hours every day, 7 days a week. But how does the quality of your work look like? And that's very important. So I know I am a fave in our newsroom, even though they don't want to admit it, but I am a fave. And it's not only because I work, like I'm always available, but at some point in my life, that's not going to be the case. I am going to have to be unavailable. I'm eventually going to have a family and children, which I really, really want. But the current situation that I'm in right now, I will never see my child. I'll probably give birth and then be on air in 2 hours. That's my work drive, which is part of the problem, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not just Sanef or, we all have to work together and find a solution. And I like what Qaanitah said about finding the best. I would suggest my body talk woman because she's completely changed my life. I think she's kept me alive because she helps me on a level I've never ever seen before. But we need, yeah, but that's the thing. Everyone has different trauma. My trauma is very different to Qaanitah's trauma. My trauma and your trauma is very different. It's also about childhood trauma that also creeps up and gets triggered by certain stories that we cover. Like I always gravitate to stories that involve babies and children, and I've had to learn to detach because it's going to kill me. It's literally going to kill me. So we all have to work together. And I know we've spoken about the really bad of journalism and the mental health, which is what the discussion was about. But it is a beautiful space to be in, and it is very rewarding. It's not just feeding my ego or feeding the drug of next story, next scoop, what happened, where I'm coming. Like, it's also rewarding we do change people's lives and we do make a difference. And that's what keeps me up, what lets me wake up every morning and say, you have to do it. But also you have to look after yourself.
And we are phenomenally more enriched by your presence in journalism, and our South Africa is grateful
Are you
for
saying
what you.
sweet?
Yes. No, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being facetious.
Thank you.
You-
You make me emotional.
No. No,
No.
because I genuinely say this that I mean, on a Saturday night when you're on air, I'm just like, girl, I'm going out. You know. But it's not for nothing, and it's a great privilege to have people like you in this world. And having stepped out of the space for a little bit, I realize that there's not many people cut out to do. Everyone thinks they can do what we do, but not many people actually can. And so look after yourself, because it's not only about you.
Yeah.
You hanging on is about a whole generation. We have a generational responsibility to make this place better, not only for journalists, but for the rest of the country and the rest of the world.
Thank you. We also need you in the space. So don't
I'm unemployed.
No, someone must employ you.
Right. Thank you very much. That was an incredibly powerful session, I thought. Hugely fascinating and so rewarding to listen to. Thank you both very much for sharing such deeply personal details and stories. It was absolutely riveting. But we have to stop because we are well over our time, and I know you probably have some work to get to. And we have to. Excellent. And we have to harass. We have to harass Qaanitah to join us for our next session. But I do. Yeah, I mean, we are very lucky to have both of you as such wonderful role models for young people and journalists who want to be journalists, because despite the traumas, you have risen, and look at the successes that you are. It's amazing. So we are very, very privileged to have you with us today. Thank you. And yeah, in line with the CIA standard operating procedure, as you know, these are the things. These are our tokens of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and
Yeah,
thank you
to
for
speak.
being here.
Sure.
Right. We're going to have a picture with us in a moment, but just before we do that, one last thing. Today, this afternoon at 6, so in just a few hours, we've got our next session called Rate the Hate. That deals with another fun subject, hate speech, which in this instance, we're going to deal with it in a fun way. We've got scenarios. We have teams who have to determine if something is hate speech or not. And we've got Advocate Ben Winks, who makes these things very easy to understand when they're incredibly difficult legal and ethical concepts. So please join us for that. Tell your friends to come join us. There's lovely fresh refreshments, drinks and whatever, whether you're trying to dull your senses or just make it through the afternoon. Anyway, thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you at 6 o'clock.